Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, Part 2, Chapter 15. The place where Levin took Oblonsky was not far away, by a shallow stream flowing through an aspen grove. He posted him in a mossy nook, somewhat marshy, where the snow had just melted. He himself went to the opposite side, near a double birch, rested his gun on one of the lower branches, took off his kaftan, clasped a belt around his waist, and moved his arms to see that nothing bound him. Old Laska, following him step by step, sat down cautiously in front of him and pricked up her ears. The sun was setting behind the great forest, and against the eastern sky the young birches and aspens stood up distinctly with their bending branches and their swelling buds. In the forest, where the snow still lay, the sound of running waters could be heard. Little birds were chirping and flying from tree to tree. Sometimes the silence seemed broken only by the rustling of the dry leaves, moved by the thawing earth or the pushing herbs. "Why, one really can hear the grass grow," said Levin to himself as he saw a moist and slate-colored aspen leaf raised by the blade of a young herb starting from the sod. He was on his feet, listening and looking, now at the moss-covered ground, now at the watchful Laska, now at the bare tree-tops of the forest which swept like a sea to the foot of the hill, and now at the darkening sky, where floated bits of little white clouds. A vulture flew aloft, slowly flapping his broad wings above the forest. Another took the same direction and disappeared. In the thicket the birds were chirping louder and gayer than ever. An owl in the distance lifted his voice. Laska pricked up her ears again, took 2 or 3 cautious steps, and bent her head to listen. On the other side of the stream a cuckoo twice uttered its feeble notes, and then ceased hoarsely and timidly. "Why, the cuckoo has come," said Stepan Arkadyevitch, leaving his place. "Yes, I hear," said Levin, disgusted that the silence of the forest was broken by the sound even of his own voice. Stepan Arkadyevitch returned to his place behind his thicket, and nothing more was seen of him except a flash of a match and the red glow of his cigarette and a light bluish smoke. "Chick, chick," said Stepan Arkadyevitch, cocked his gun. "What was that making that noise?" he demanded of his companion, attracting his attention to a strange sound, like a child imitating the neighing of a horse. "Don't you know what that is? That is a male rabbit." "Da, don't speak any more," cried Levin, in turn cocking his gun. A whistle was heard in the distance with that rhythmic regularity which the huntsman knows so well. Then a moment or two later it was repeated nearer, and suddenly changed into a hoarse little cry. Levin turned his eyes to the right, to the left, and finally saw, just above his head, against the fading blue of the sky, above the gently waving aspens, a bird flying towards him. Its cry, like the noise made by tearing cloth, rang in his ears. Then he distinguished the long sight of it when a red flash shone out from behind Oblonsky's bush. The bird fluttered in the air as though struck and turned to fly up again, but again the light flashed, and the bird, vainly striving to rise, flapped its wings for a second and fell heavily to earth. "Did I miss?" asked Stepan Arkadyevitch, who could see nothing through the smoke. "Here she is," cried Levin, pointing to Laska, who, with one ear erect and with slightly wagging tail, slowly, as though to lengthen out the pleasure, came back with the bird in her mouth, seeming almost to smile as she laid the game down at her master's feet. "No, I'm glad you hit," said Levin, though he felt a slight sensation of envy. "The left barrel missed. Beastly gun," replied Stepan Arkadyevitch. "Shh, here's another." In fact, the whistles came thicker and thicker, rapid and sharp. 2 snipe flew over the hunters, chasing each other. 4 shots rang out, and the snipe, turning on their track like swallows, disappeared from sight. The sport was excellent. Stepan Arkadyevitch killed 2 others, and Levin also 2, one of which was lost. It grew darker and darker. Venus, with silvery light, shone out in the west, and in the east Arcturus gleamed with a somber reddish fire. At intervals Levin saw the great bear. No more snipe appeared, but Levin resolved to wait until Venus, which was visible through the branches of his birch tree, rose clear above the hills on the horizon, and till the great bear was entirely visible. The star had passed beyond the birch trees, and the wane of the bear was shining out clear in the sky, and he was still waiting. "Isn't it getting late?" asked Stepan Arkadyevitch. All was calm in the forest. Not a bird moved. "Let's wait a little," replied Levin. "Just as you please." At this moment they were not 15 steps apart. "Stiva," cried Levin suddenly, "you've not told me whether your sister-in-law is married yet, or whether she is to be married soon." He felt so calm. His mind was so thoroughly made up that nothing, he thought, could move him. But he did not expect Stepan Arkadyevitch's answer. "She's not married, and she's not thinking of marriage. She's very ill, and the doctors have sent her abroad. They even fear for her life." "What did you say?" cried Levin. "Ill? What's the matter? How did she—" While they were talking thus, Laska, with ears erect, was gazing at the sky above her head and looking at them reproachfully. "It is not the time to talk," thought Laska. "Ah, here comes one. There he goes. They'll miss him." At the same instant a sharp whistle pierced the ears of the two huntsmen, and both, leveling their guns, shot at once. The two reports, the two flashes, were simultaneous. The snipe flapped his wings, drew up his delicate legs, and fell into the thicket. "Excellent, both together!" cried Levin, running with Laska in search of the game. "Ah, da! What was it that hurt me just so now? Oh, yes, Kitty's ill," he remembered. "What's to be done about it? It's very sad. Oh, I found it. Good dog," said he, taking the bird from Laska's mouth to put it into his overflowing game bag.